Was Deborah Tripp. I'm an oldest of 6 children. I'm a Native American of San Francisco, but I was born and raised in the Fillmore district in 1954. I was at that time. Today I'm 69 years old, and I'm honored to be able to have this experience. We were from an area that the redevelopers actually wanted us to move, and they had the plan for some time where we weren't aware of it. I went to John Swett Elementary from the kindergarten to the 6th grade in 1966. That was the last graduation at that school. However, my sisters and brothers, they weren't able to go to school in the neighborhood anymore. They had to be bused out very far from our home, which was a challenge. The redevelopers, as I was mentioned, they wanted us to sell the house to them so that they can tear it down. And it was supposed to be a plan that we were supposed to move back, but with the rents constantly increasing, that was not possible. So we had a really serious experience with a large explosion. I mean, it was serious. One Sunday morning at 2 a.m., we heard this loud noise, boom, boom, boom. The windows were blown out of the house. The ceiling fell in the living room. My sister Jewel was actually in bed. She was covered with glass. And my brother Richard, he came out of the room walking on glass. We were just in shock. It was horrifying. My father went outside and saw the house across the street was actually blown up. And it was just one piece of wood dangling on a rod. Our beauty shop was on the first floor, and the windows were all blown out and the ceiling was blown in, and there were some houses on the block that were having fires there. We actually just stirred around, and when we got ourselves together later on in the day, we noticed when we had gone outside, there was white people walking around in the area, just looking at the damage where the fire departments had come in and put black sheets all over. My father was actually told by the redevelopers that if he didn't sell his property, that they would condemn the house and he wouldn't get anything. So we had to follow through, and we stayed there for a few months with him repairing the house the best he could. And after, I think it was 1968, I was 13 at that time, and we had to, we bought a house. Because that wasn't the best house that we could have gotten, but because we were paid such a low salary, a low amount for the house, it was the best that we could do. So I was able to graduate from George Washington High School, and my sisters, they eventually, were bused even in that area. So we had to eventually start separating and living in different places, because in 1970s the rent had increased so much we could not afford to live there. So we all pretty much lived in different states, and from there to Alaska and Africa. So we really feel grateful that the advisories is really wanting to make this an opportunity for a lot of us to have a better life. All the homelessness that we have today. That was never happened during our time when we were growing up, and it was very little crime. We were more of a family community. So hopefully you guys know what to do. So do what you do. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi, my name is Richard Cannon Sr. I was born September 24th, 1957. Around 1967, there was some kind of explosion happened in my neighborhood. We were just kids. And so one night I got woken up by a big explosion. The windows was all blown out in my room. I get up and run towards the living room, and I go in the living room and I noticed my father was just standing there shocked. And when I start getting closer, I noticed what he was looking at. I noticed my sister's Joe's bed was just covered in glass, and she was underneath the blankets all covered in glass. So I realized that's why I was shocking her. But at that time, my mom and my other sisters came in. My other three sisters came in. I noticed she wasn't there. That's when I realized that she ran down the hallway and go get my sisters. And so about that time, I go look out the window and I noticed people outside running around. I noticed the building across the street from my house it wasn't there no more. The only thing that was there was just the buildings adjacent to it, you know. And people were talking about it got blown up or something, which that's what it looked like. And so I noticed down the road a ways there was some kind of fire going on down there. I assumed it was a part of the explosion. And even around the corner in the alleyway, a bunch of buildings over there, the windows got blown up. So it was a pretty powerful blast. And within the 2-block radius of windows and everything was blown out, you know. So that was a pretty powerful blast for a 10-year-old kid, you know. And so that's when the life changed for me and everybody in the neighborhood. You know, that's when we noticed that everybody was threatening. They had to sell their houses for a lowball price, you know. And that's how you white people treat us, you know. You blow us up. It's kind of sad. You blow us up to get us out of the neighborhood. Because to me, I might have been 10 years old, but we knew what was going on. I knew what you guys were doing at 10 years old. What we do to you. You enslaved us. Not the way around. You made it that way for us. It's been hell all my life, being black. You're trying to shoot us up, kill us any kind of way. But you know what? Here we are, still here. Outlasting the turmoil you put me through as a 10-year-old kid. How does that make you feel now? I'm still here, up in the Arctic, living. Do I want to be here? Yes and no. I'm here because you made me come here. My parents had to move my crazy butt out of San Francisco. You miss me. I'm not a drug addict. You made us a drug addict. You made my people the way they are. You know what I'm talking about is true. Here are the facts. And these are the facts. I have friends gone. Hooked on drugs. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Naasira Ageela, known as Mama Naasira. I wanted to share this story about my great aunt, who was a very special woman. My mother family were from Arkansas, Magnolia, and they had an experience that my mother actually had the opportunity to live with her grandmother, and she learned a lot. Her grandmother told her when she was a girl, she and her sister lived in a plantation house, and they did a lot of the cooking. Is where my great grandmother was one of the best cooks. I understand when my great aunts were growing up. She and her sister were mulattoes, and their father died, and the wife of the house forced them out where they had to stay out in the fields with the other American blacks. And after the challenge of people treating them badly, they decided to run away with 2 brothers. So it was 2 sisters and 2 brothers. They ran away, and then they decided to marry, and they started a family. My great-grandmother and her husband had 10 children. They didn't live very long because the times were very difficult. I think it was back in the 18-something of that time. And a few of the children died, and then there were 2 sisters that passed away in their 20s. They were working very, very hard. I understand one sister, she left her husband in the field working on the farm, and she came home and sat in the chair, and she never did wake up, and her children were there, and the husband came back, and there she was. However, my great-grandmother raised my mother because her mother was killed when she was a baby. So my grandmother told, her grandmother told a lot of stories. The great aunt, one of the daughters, married a young man, and he left to go to the army. This was in World War I understand. And she moved back, Anna Mae moved back with the family, her father and her mother and the other family members. And they got a knock at the door one day, and the sheriff came by looking for her to let her know that her husband was killed in the World War I, and they gave her $10,000. And this was a great opportunity for our family to leave those conditions. My great aunt, the younger one, she decided she was going to San Francisco. She was a school teacher there in the South. They had their own ways of educating their people the best they could. So she took my great-grandmother to San Francisco, and my great-grandfather had passed on. So this gave her an opportunity to live a new life in San Francisco, where they had lots of job opportunities. They were connected with Third Baptist Church at this time. This was back in probably the late 40s, early 50s. And then shortly after, my mother was living with the other aunt because my great-grandmother had gotten up in age, and she couldn't continue to raise my mother. So she stayed with the other aunt. Anna Mae is the one that I adore so much because she lived downstairs in our house. So they came to San Francisco in the 50s, and my mother started school there. She was into business education. However, we lived in the Fillmore area, and we owned our house, and my mother said she wanted our great aunt to live downstairs, and she did. It was just wonderful. I learned all the cooking skills that I have. She was also a person, she was a Pisces. She always had money, to help the family, I guess because of her situation of her, death of her husband. She would always tell me, in this life, you either keep up or you move out the way for the next person. She gave me all this wisdom, and she talked about the harshness of, the South and how they were mistreated. And it's amazing, I didn't have any understanding of that at the time, but I listened. She also was a great cook because my great-grandmother was a wonderful cook. They baked cakes and pies, and they had big dinners. My great aunt used to tell us that Christmas would last not just for a few days, it lasts for the whole month. They had so much food, people would come and eat. And one food that was really great were the cakes with this blackberry jam. I don't know if you can find that today. It was just not the jelly, it was the jam. It was very coarse. And they used to make jam cake. I learned about the spices, the allspices, the cloves, different spices, thyme, and basil. All of this is what they used to make. The soups. They used to make roast beef. They even made pork because that was in that day. They used to make corn, casseroles, good dressings. With lots of onions and garlic and bell pepper. That's pretty much where I've gotten this foundation of cooking. And also my great aunt, after she was in her 60s, she became ill with the diabetes. And she had told me growing up, when she was a younger woman, baking all those cakes, it caused her to have a lot of inflammation and fat in her body. And in San Francisco, that was when I had the opportunity, when I used to go downstairs and see her cook, and I saw her using more vegetables with her meat. So I really learned a lot. And with the diabetes, you know, she was very conscious. And it's like with my situation too, getting the hepatitis, I really believe that that was to let me know that there's certain foods that we can't eat is from the foundation of my great-grandmother. But after several years of enjoying that family connection, we were forced to move. And my great aunt, unfortunately, she didn't have the opportunity to move to the house that we had bought. And we really had to leave because the house across the street was bombed. And that was the disconnect of our family. And my great aunt had to move in an apartment by herself. And I can remember living quite a ways, and I didn't have the opportunity to see her very much because I was going to a new school and, you know, having a different experience. But anyway, she made her transition at the age of 66, the same as my mother, 66, and it was really, that was their time, and they were, you know, great people of that time. Thank you.